Okay, and send a link to our current agenda to the chat. I'm sorry, but I wrote the agenda today just in the last minute because I was too busy all these days.
You're much better than me. I didn't contribute to the notes or anything from last time, so I'm really sorry. Yeah.
No, nothing special. And then I should also.
I want to
turn
share
on
this
the-
document with, oh, good,
Oh.
Jonas is here.
Yeah, hi Jonas, and yeah, I am coming now with AI note taker.
Oh yeah, those guys are good. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to share a document with you in the chat.
Please, please do.
It's something new. I just wrote it yesterday, but I'll try to explain it to you, and then I'll see.
Yeah, please, can you share the document because I need to do an urgent conversation and I need 5 minutes.
Take your time. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Jonas and Benche, not sure how to pronounce it.
Bente.
Bente. Okay, thank you, Bente. We have this project with Koara on research assessment for data and AI. There's also this thing called the European Open Science Cloud, which is taking forever to get its act together, and they kind of just revised it this year, and they're starting again almost, it looks like, in some ways. I got to share this again for Sergio as well. But in any event, so we have to build.
Hi.
Hello, Sergio.
Hello. Hello.
I'm sending you some propaganda. So we have to build this. We have to come up with a way to do research assessment for AI and for data, or the digital space is probably a better way of saying it. And we not only want to do that, but we also want to build a tool to do it with. And then yesterday I saw that this EU node, which is kind of interesting. If you look at the website, it's in the top of the document. They have these services. And so I thought to myself, why don't we just build the thing in EOS? And then we have already our implementation and everything, rather than building it separately. Now, when I look at that, one of the services they provide is identifiers. So it could be interesting to look at just what they mean by identifiers, what kind of identifiers they're suggesting, and see if the framework that this group is using, which I don't understand, but anyway, not that it's just me, not you. But I think that it's going to be this, we're going to have such a good system for identifying digital objects if anything is going to work in science. So anyway, we have a working group on, and I think Andre knows about this too, Within our working group, we have a work stream. Let me tell you before I tell you lies. We have a work stream on the development of a comprehensive toolkit for best practices in research assessments. And I don't know how much I can fit in the chat. I'll just put it there so you can read it yourselves. So that's what we sort of have to develop for this thing. Oops. So it's too long. So anyway, these are the systems we want to build or whatever. Somebody else has to do it because I don't know what any of this is about. But if we build these things, then we will forever change science. That's for sure. But how to do it? Maybe this stuff already exists. I don't know. Sorry for all this junk in the chat, but this is what it's about. And what they offer there in this what the EOS is offering is also like this space where you can you can play to build a tool or something. So if that's going to work, that'll work. A few words missing, but there's too many words anyway. So that's everything that I know. Anyway, so we're going to start working in September. We'll have on the 19th, we'll have the first general meeting, and then work stream 3 will meet somewhere around the 19th too. And I think this framework that you're talking about somehow is the right framework in which to you know, if you change the way people do research assessment, you will change science, because everything now is impact factors and ratings and things like that. So instead of, you know, having the 3 or 6 of us or whatever, including the note taker, do peer review, if we can get AI to do peer review across the whole body of science, that'd be an amazing thing.
Yes,
Anyway,
that's sorry.
that's the whole thing here. Yeah. Andre, you've heard about this before. So this is what the Koara ARIP project is, and I put in the chat at the top of the chat, way up there. There's a document I wrote yesterday as a proposal to use the European Open Science Cloud and do a look at how we can how we can do an experimental thing there on open science.
Yeah, I will.
Anyway, that's it. I just came to hijack the meeting. I think I've done it.
No, I will.
meeting,
I
yeah.
just downloaded the document, and then may I share it using the Google document?
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay.
Okay,
It's
so
a
I will-
proposal, so it's a little bit sensitive because I mean, I don't care if everybody sees it. I just don't want the people think I ran ahead of the system on it. But there'll be a decision, they say, at the end of August, so we'll see. Yeah. So it's a
Okay.
proposal to do, and what's interesting really is the virtual machine. So
Yeah.
you can do file sync and share. That seems to me like a Google Drive, but you can also use a virtual machine to develop your use case, whatever it is. And so I think if we build it, I mean, EOSC is going to take forever to do anything if they ever do anything. But because this project is really a European Commission project, if we build it on a European platform, it's going to be really powerful, and it's going. I think it will impact EOSC as well if we can do something. Yeah.
Yeah, so, but this platform, as I'm not, let's say, very familiar with it, is it, do you consider it as free as, for example, GitHub in terms of virtual machines and so on?
No, nothing any government does is going to be as free as GitHub or something like that. No government is ever going to do that, and especially European government. Europe is an economic community in the first place. They now want to change it into a warring community as well. They want to have their own army and stuff like that. That'll make it even more interesting. But in the first place, it's an economic community. It comes from the coal and steel industries, and it's always been rooted in economics. So IP is much more important than open science ever will be. And big companies are much more interesting than small scientists and things like that. That's just the way the world is, so that won't change. But I always look for a backdoor to be disruptive.
Yeah, because my natural question here, and probably Sergio will support me, is if we will use this platform as one of the endpoints of the deployment, if there is a possibility that some governmental efforts could be placed to limit the spreading of the system. Because if yes, then we should be ready to avoid. And this is why I place it onto the agenda, the question about private key infrastructure, because it's a part of also this kind of management. And this is, I think, and I believe that we should think about it at first.
Yeah, well, I think you should think about it.
Just to illustrate, sorry to interrupt. Just to illustrate, we should ask a question if Cubans and Iranians could collaborate in a platform based on European platform. Just to set an example of two countries that suffer restrictions.
Yeah, even me, as a man carrying Russian passport, despite I'm working in Italy, it still creates some problems. And during the deployment on this, let's say, government management platform, if it would create a problem, then we should think about how to limit these problems and to keep a redundancy on. So this is now, sadly, it's a first question we should place on. What do you think?
Is that the correct way to see it? I mean, if we build something that is supposed to change science, then maybe those restrictions will be lifted because of it. Because we could actually make the argument that if you want to use this, you need to lift the restrictions.
The thing is, who will care? Because from the governmental point of view, actually no one will care. And let's say if it comes to the economical restrictions, then they will be always more important. Because, for example, once you have a part of the ecosystem, then the first we have already encountered this. The first question from the, let's say, the governmental side is who will own your data once you will just drop them off.
I have not experienced that at all, actually, but I have mainly been working with the Swedish government.
Well, sadly, I have done. And I have encountered a lot of problems just these past weeks due just to the technologies I am working on, and these technologies are totally open source. And let's say the problem is existing. So I may place the question for Francis. Could you please explain the just a bit in more detailed way to how to manage the virtual machines you are speaking about?
Yeah.
So
You
what
know,
are the
there's always going to
conditions?
be, we're just human beings, that's all we are. We're not anything more than human beings. We're always going to run into limitations, okay? I can only run so fast, I can't even run anymore, to be honest. So, I mean, I can only, I wanted to ride my bike fast, I can never ride my bike fast. So all these kinds of things, we have limitations as human beings. We always run into limitations. I think so my plan really is to build this thing for Koala on EOSC, but right away go to the Global Open Science Cloud in Beijing with it, and to go to the African Open Science Platform with it as well. So it goes there as well. We're still going to have limitations always, and every government is going to come out with limitations. That's their job. Job is to write laws, which are limitations. So, but the thing is, I think what we have to do, and what you have to do really, is keep the tool in your hand. So if they limit the tool in EOSC, which they inevitably will do at some point in some way, because they're government and they have to do that, that's their job. But if you have the tool and you can take it to Brazil, or you can take it to the US, or you can take it to Nigeria, they can't do much about it. No, they'll still find a way. They're gonna get their hands on Bitcoin and everything else eventually. But
Yeah, well, I understand.
that's just life.
understand.
That's just life.
Yeah, I understand the point. And literally, I could say that, let's say from the very, very beginning and the point of view of, let's say from far away, it seems the platform for the initial deployment, except only one thing. If we could be asked about limiting and access to the part of the ecosystem we are building, because you know that, for example, in Australia, some kind of decentralized technologies are banned. For example, if you are owning the BitTorrent client in Australia, you could be easily just prosecuted.
Yeah, but you know, the nice thing about this with EOSC, with Koala, it's a European project. So
Yeah.
it's something they're asking. I mean, literally, the commission has said to me, you come with the tool and we'll use it for the Horizon project.
Yeah.
So let's just do our job and pretend we don't know anything about politics.
Okay, so you consider this kind of doing the things, it's possible in this. It's good. It's good.
It's up to you. It's a discussion. So plus, I mean, I just submitted the proposal, I wrote the proposal, so sent it yesterday. I didn't even tell the people in Koala, everybody. We have a meeting tomorrow. I'll discuss it again with some of them, but you also need to have success. And you know, every revolutionary needs a backdoor. Lenin had to sneak into Russia. You know,
Yeah,
the Germans had to help him sneak in. That's the only way he was going to do it. You know,
Yeah,
and
then,
now how to sneak around
yeah.
the country too.
Then we could consider this as a possibility, and I will soon just study the document and to see how would we interact with this system. Okay. Okay.
The more important thing is what can you bring to it, because this is not something
Yeah.
I understand. But that's what I'm looking for. I don't know what it is I'm looking for, but I'm looking for something to do research assessment in a much more objective way. I don't think everything published in the British Medical Journal or the Lancet and the English Journal, not the journals I'm familiar with, are really great intellectual contributions, or sometimes much more than political contributions. But they're published in scientific journals. That's okay. That will always happen. But I think if Sergio publishes something and we have to get a bit beyond the reputation thing and so forth, and give a little bit more objectivity to science. And this particularly in the digital space. So we have to do it in the digital space, and we have to use the digital space to do it.
Yes, Jonas?
Yes, when you're saying more objectivity, you mean to the sort of vetting process or the peer reviewing? Because the science will always be science. You just can't find it if it's not published in a high impact journal.
Not only can't you find it, you can't get it funded.
That is also true. But the science will not be more objective just because you can't find it or fund it.
No, but if you can show that the paper you wrote, you know, of course, Andre and Sergio and Bente are going to slam whatever paper you wrote because they just don't like you, right? So you're never going to get anything published. But if you can, we'll still need the peer review because we're human beings, so we want that. But if we can show that really Jonas has published something that even, you know, Einstein didn't think about, and it really is important, that then maybe we can also, I'm just saying that we can do a better job.
Definitely.
But it won't be the perfect job.
The first time I got peer reviewed, the reviewer said, and I quote, "I didn't bother reading it because you didn't quote me."
Very fair statement in my point of view. Yeah, very fair. No, I mean, that's a good, that's just peer review.
That was because it was completely irrelevant, but
yeah,
it had nothing to do with my work.
yeah, yeah.
I had read his article. I just didn't think my work was based on it. But
Well, if they had quoted me, I wouldn't read it for sure. That I know. Yeah. So
yeah.
No, that's the thing. But it's also the case that the body of science is so large now that we need new tools. That's why the identifiers are so important too. Sorry.
Yeah, maybe a bit of a different take. I don't think the way to solve this problem is a technological. It's a cultural thing in science and higher education. So you can put all the sort of digital tools you want. There is many cool innovative projects when it comes to peer review, how you set it up, how you remunerate people who do peer review, how you enhance the quality of the peer review. But in the end, it's a cultural thing of how higher education has worked for many years, and it has been incentivized to work like that. So it's a very difficult approach because I for one, I agree that it has to be kind of a backdoor to get in because we can't do it any other way. But also we kind of have to know that there are limits and we won't be able to solve it with any technology because it's so deeply cultural. So the question is, what is the approach that can make everybody sort of happy to work on it without like draining all of your energy because you will spend your entire life trying to fight a cultural I guess system. So it's very difficult, I think.
I would have one suggestion there, and that is to make identifiers and such so that people in Africa or South America or any global South country able to use them. So in that way, we can multiple the amount of science that we can actually access. And I think that would be an incentive even for people in Europe and America. But that's just my thoughts.
Yeah, that's the take, and that's something we talked last time. I shared in the chat I just registered the domain, but it's also just to illustrate the idea that what I think we should work towards to. And this is this digital object universal identifier. It's a like, and I think we should focus on metadata more than sharing data itself. So if we can create a tool that's decentralized, that the metadata is shared not only in a place but in the network, that we and that easily everybody can appropriate the tool and use it, whatever the people is located, then slowly a culture of moving from the north to the south something can be done. But what is important is that it should be universal, that everybody could, without restriction, be part of the network.
So may we write it down as a first point of top three. So if someone of us could you please write it down on the agenda or the highlighted topics?
We have a note taker.
Yeah, but it's let's say it's will be probably difficult to extract from. So I will try. So I will write it down like let's the PID as universal as everyone could install and use. Just the phrase. Okay.
I have a continuation on that, and if it is really universal and everyone jumps it, it would be very much incentivized to actually use that protocol after a while, which would make, I guess, some people feel like they are losing control because they are now sitting on huge databases of PIDs and stuff like that. So that it might be that you only get people who are not really available for buying a lot of digital object identifiers today in on this train. Then again, that could be good, I guess.
Yes, and let me just write it down, and then we would proceed. So some seconds.
But to me, the best way to actually get hold of data when you haven't done any data collection yourself would be to have a lot of data to choose from, or at least to find. If you can find it, you might see that it's behind some sort of security wall, but at least you have found it and you know that such data exists. And that in itself is very, very good for a researcher.
Yes, so I wrote down the point. So please feel free to edit it if you want.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, and my question, it's the first question of the agenda for today, is well, our rolling agenda reached 60 pages long. So it started to work slowly. Would you like to switch to another document?
Yes.
Okay, so I will create it just afterwards this meeting, after placing the minutes here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just
And we will
link to the new one from the old one in case somebody.
Yes, of course.
So
And didn't any one of us have a look on the summary I wrote?
think
Do
I
you
did.
have something to discuss or something to add as a highlight or to place that I have missed?
I see that Lars just arrived. Could you post it again to
Of course.
him, maybe?
Or is what I just posted is not right.
Here they are.
Oh my, you were not kidding.
Sorry?
No, this document, it keeps jumping up and down.
Yes, it's because it's extremely slow. It's 60 pages long.
Could I just ask about the DeSci Foundation? Is it,
Sorry?
yeah, I wanted to ask about the DeSci Foundation. Is it really going too far away from what we want? I just think that
I got the impression they wanted to make it proprietary. Am I wrong?
Let's say Sina sent a long message on our mailing list in let's say in answering the thing I was saying about let's say parting the ways in development. Well, they are declaring that they are developing the completely free technology. But the thing is that the deployment is now extremely slow. I know it as I tried to deploy their technology stack, and they are it is starting from a singular point. Well, we will not avoid it, but in the case it's also because it's blockchain used and the ceramic ledger is used, it could create, let's say, the long-term monopoly, I guess, on let's say storing and synchronizing the data, like it happened with the services providing the pinning for IPFS, like Piñata. Because let's say everyone actually may prefer to pay to Piñata some money instead of pinning on their own, because it's just a bit more difficult. And it's even more difficult to create direct acyclic graphs. Also, I'm pretty surprised that the DeSci Foundation didn't use the advantages which is already implemented, for example, in aero technology, instead of using DAG, because it's extremely difficult, even from the developer point of view, to control the building of DAG. So I don't see this project is coming to be open source and free PID. It's more looking like let's say the open librarian, but with a paid subscription. So it's a business model and the social contract instead of open description to me. So if you have any other opinion, please tell it.
my concern, I think, the Bloxburg looks interesting too, but my view is that we do need to collaborate.
Of course, and Sina also told that we can do. But we have 2 points on which we could, let's say, we could separate the ways. The first is a usage of the ledger, and the second is a usage of blockchain. Because from this, it's actually a manner in which IPFS network is used. And also the direct acyclic graphs are used. Because let's say in DSI nodes, there is no way to retrieve out of the system their mechanism of, let's say, handling the mutability and versioning. It's all created over the ledger. And the ledger is actually a blockchain. So if
Could you not introduce mutability into that system then?
let's say, imagine the simple versioning. And so if we have to mint a single PID for different versions of the documents as it is done on Zenodo. In terms of, because, well, sorry, but I have no illustrative material to do this. We can always refer to the website of Nodes.
I have a completely different question in the
Yeah.
meantime. Do we know what kind of work has been already done within the EOSC network in terms of their PID work group and similar things? Because they have been working years to do many of these things and have tools already available. Could we adapt one of those?
Well, from my point of view, the best point of adoption is Uniresolver, as Slava once and many times shown to us. But this project is, let's say, at first it's plugin based, so it's, let's say, not so easy to deploy, and it requires an API endpoint of one of the established PID ecosystems like DOI.
Okay, so it's not distributed.
Let's say it's claimed and declared to be distributed, but let's say even from the developer point of view, it's not truly decentralized.
Okay. Could that be
It's redundant.
easily?
Sorry?
Could that easily be changed?
To be honest, I don't know. I studied it a bit, but I have too little time to study it as well to understand this. If we have no Slava, we don't have here, so probably it's the best way to write a request for him and to discuss with him.
Because I think there are many constellations that are really looking into this now, EOS being one of them. You have, I guess, RDA, and you have EGI, and lots of letters.
Yes. The thing is, let's say from a governmental point of view, we have even the link on our Mattermost channel, and in one of the draft documents by the USA government, that it's declared to have must have a centralized architecture.
But we have to build something.
Yeah.
This is the critical thing. You have to build it. It's always going to have limitations, but you do have to connect into other systems or nobody will use it.
Yes, of course. And this is why even on the last meeting, we were speaking about using the existing metadata from the DOI ecosystem and OpenAlex database. So the compatibility should be the critical point. And the compatibility with, let's say, one of the centralized, already established ecosystem, this could be a target.
I agree.
This could be a target, yeah. So sadly, I don't know why, but Zoom places to me an error. I cannot share my screen. No, I cannot. So sorry for this, but I cannot.
Oh, I can.
Okay, please.
Yeah, well, I'm not at the correct place, I think. I mean our notes.
No, I was opening the design nodes.
Okay, but I can do that as well. It's so
Nodes design.com.
design.com.
Here it is. I placed the domain name on the chat.
Okay, then I want to see the chat. Ah, the nodes.
Yes.
Go directly into those. Can you see this?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so they change it really a lot. So they are now trying to also deal with the submission package. But to be honest, I didn't study it very well. What is a submission package in their terms?
I
Okay.
just noticed that this nodes and EOS EU node, there must be some overlap there, some similarity in approach.
I think one of the technologies was, let's say, at least something was borrowed. Some model probably was borrowed, because as Nodes is now totally concentrated on sharing the scientific publications and validating the peer reviews.
I, however, did not get a verification code, so
It's strange. It's strange, but it's yeah. And this is one of the point I also placed there in the agenda for today. It's a private key infrastructure for us, because let's say to build literally the decentralized sharing model, it's a critical point, and this is what we should start with.
So they're using ORCID.
They are using ORCID. We could also use ORCID, but in just accept one thing. How many people are using ORCID on the global south, Sergio?
Yeah, it's quite spread because it's a free tool and easy to adapt. I think it's a model we can imitate with the universal identifier, you know?
Yeah. So we can. So it seems that we can use ORCID as a starting point as an authentication infrastructure.
So
I
the
think-
the idea would be to connect the PID with the ORCID. Because that's what
yes.
people want to. They want to have an
Yes.
association between what they published, what they created, and a personal identifier.
Oh yeah, and so here we have an opportunity to melt together the ORCID and some kind of let's say independent key management. So if someone wants, he should have an opportunity to generate his own key and use it. Otherwise, he may generate his own key using ORCID and rely on the external trusted service. But here, yeah, please.
Simplicity should be and also like to share just metadata at the beginning, not data itself.
Exactly.
With a schema that it could be easily adapted from every, I mean, not only fair principles, but also care principles, you know, that it was also created for the indigenous, so everybody can contribute to open science and to really have a tool for open science, because persistent identifiers is the Achilles heel of open science nowadays. If we don't have a universal identifier without paid restrictions without some knowledge that you don't have to be an expert in order to have it. It should be very simple. And then, of course, open source and collectively developed, so it will not be unchangeable over time. We could fix things going on, but to have what we are aiming for, it should be very clear what tool. That's why I registered, just to have an idea, this digital object, a universal identifier, and even give it an image. I don't know if you could.
Yes,
see
yes,
the
yes.
webpage.
I saw the page.
So
I saw
it's
the
very
page.
easy. And this is just an illustration, no? But I think something that we should aim to find that tool.
Yeah, just to find a tool. So if you want, download.
And
if you want,
and that the network also holds the whole information. The information is not located in one place, but like when you share with the peer-to-peer, you know, that the network also has all the metadata.
yeah, and the metadata are automatically synchronized. So returning to a discussion about nodes on the SI Foundation. Let's say this solution doesn't have an easy approach to automatically synchronize the metadata. Actually, the metadata is stored on the node, which shares some information.
So can you see this?
Yes, I can.
So can I do something here to illustrate what you're talking about?
Well, you can just try to create a node. And fill some fields, and that's all. So you will never see where actually the node, this interface shares your data. The only thing you can do is to retrieve the content ID and to pin it manually to your own IPFS implementation or installation you have. So it's not done automatically. It may be done automatically only on the cluster, which is deployed on the same domain than nodes.
So if I just do something like this.
Yeah, you can store some binary data and then obtain the content ID. Well, they are claiming to have the persistence of this kind.
So I can't delete it.
Yes.
Okay. I do not wish to publish a very abstract.
Yeah.
So maybe not, unless there's something cool afterwards.
So you see, once you are trying to do anything, you already encounter the problem.
Yes.
So it's literally it's nothing different from Zenodo.
No, it's not.
No. Then and this was a main ideation about developing something new.
I see.
And actually, and sadly for all of us, I think this was the understanding why Eric left the project.
It makes sense because
Yeah, it
that's a
does.
huge difference.
It does. And it was also the another point I placed on the agenda for today. Do you now have any, let's say, second point on our top 3? So we need to think a bit more, I guess.
Yeah, what was the first one?
Please look at the agenda document. It's
Right.
make PID as
Yeah.
universal as everyone may be able to install and use it without placing the efforts to mint, collect, synchronize, and find metadata and the linked data.
Following the fair and care principles.
Yes, that's I will add it.
Where is it?
On the current meeting
Current
and
meeting?
for today's meeting on the agenda document, it's the first meeting of all.
Current meeting. That's just the first thing.
Yeah, and
Contributors, workshop resource and tools, archives.
okay, just after contributing IPFS notes. So just scroll down a bit and you will find it.
A brief summary of the initial research.
Yes, this is what I have written by the beginning of the week. And before switching to another document, let's say smaller document of rolling agenda. I will now place the link to the exact
okay.
heading. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, here we are. Okay, so we are proceeding with thinking about another 2 points now. Okay, about the ideation of the private key infrastructure model, we have now at least an initial idea about integration with ORCID. Do anyone have any other ideas or suggestions about it?
Yeah, you do need a platform to run this on that's sustainable.
The platform you mean for the keys?
Yeah.
This is why we are speaking about integration with ORCID. How do you imagine this platform? This is an important thing because you are an end user. Do you have
I
an
want to
imagination?
know that there's some kind of sustainability.
So you may you want to place your key and make it sustainable for
I want to know if I publish an object that I can find it again in 3 years.
okay, but it's not about an object. Now we are speaking about the keys, so it's your identity. It's not the thing you are publishing.
Right. And
The
we're
idea
gonna need,
also needs to be sustainable. I mean, if the identity of the person disappears
Yeah,
after a while, the connection to that identity, then the connection to whoever did it is lost, and you won't be able to discern, for example, which Lars Eklund in Uppsala University did this, because there are multiple people. So that's the keys are also very important to have this long sustainability of.
Yeah, and
Because otherwise you don't have otherwise you lose the connection to the physical person.
Maybe have some sort of redundancy so that you can be identified by ORCID, your EduGain login, and something more, just so that you can always log in. Even if you lose your ORCID, you can always log in with something else, so that you connect all of your identity. I mean, your identity providers point to the same place, so to say.
so it's like something like the digital wallet with a recovery phrase or something like that.
And that is something that is rolled out in Europe, but I'm not sure that is universal. Is it?
Well, Sergio?
Yeah, I think redundancy as a strategic form of preservation can be also a second point. Like to think in redundancy instead of centralized solutions but to think in redundancy as a point of preservation. You know, like locks, clocks, or like that the network itself, and if it's universal and we spread it in size, and the redundancy itself is the solution. I mean, if every public university in the global south is like, you know, PKP, every university in the global south is holding the information of the network, then you will have sustainability.
Yeah, I think,
Yeah.
I'm not sure, Sergio, but is it more sustainability we want or redundancy? We want the redundancy to achieve the sustainability, but the real thing we want is the sustainability, right?
We want sustainability, but with redundancy as a strategy for that sustainability.
Yeah.
Yep.
About this, I could agree. And yeah,
Which
here,
means that there could be perhaps other strategies. I don't know.
oh
what they are,
yes,
but-
oh
Yes,
yes,
there could.
yes, of course.
But if we are to preserve things for, let's say, 100 years, we might need to have other structures in terms of how hardware is served. So we will have to change along the way anyway. And having redundancy means that we can phase one system out while still having the persistence there.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
it's
but
a kind of,
if we are
yeah.
thinking the tool, just start thinking like the main strategy will be redundancy. Then other solutions can be complementary.
Yeah, because now I am thinking about just trying to imagine for myself the private key infrastructure. I am thinking about something like, let's say, do you know the digital wallet identification system? So you are generating the local key with a passphrase, entering this passphrase and generating the intermediate key to encrypt and to store in the redundant network your identity, and then link it, for example, to ORCID. So there are at least two way of recovery. I don't know if it is, yes?
Yeah, I think it would be interesting to study the EOS. I don't know EOS that well, what's there already and how they're doing IDs and how they're, you know, identifying both objects and authors or
Yeah, they are identifying objects in terms of you can have like a PID on your machines, on your projects, on persons, but there they usually use ORCID and stuff like that. And they're all connected in some, I think it's called RAID or something, where you have searchability on.
Just a sec, I will drop the link on the chat. This is what they are using.
Yes, that one.
And how do they identify then objects?
You mean the
Publications or
exact
something.
technology?
Like a data set or a PDF or whatever. How do they identify those? Is it like Sonota does it, or is it something different?
Federated database. Federated database with multiple replication. So it's like
But
it
how
is
do
done
they
in-
link
if
the
you mean
PID? Yeah.
You get the initial identifier. I don't know. I think you can choose whatever.
Well, in case you have a lookup table, yes. And there is also the underlying technology of DOI. I think they are using the same, exactly the same. So it's let's say it's at least plausible to speak about it like about a federated database.
So what's wrong with that?
As it is federated, there are some let's say minority of deployers that have a monopoly control and administration of the stored metadata.
It wouldn't have to be like that.
it wouldn't have to be. But let's say when you have a stakeholder that controls around 70% of your metadata, and is literally a stakeholder. This is a problem of a social contract. It's not
How do you, but is it possible to escape that?
well, if you have, let's say, as every deployment point has to hold a part of the overall metadata of the ecosystem, it's a way to escape. And this is why we are trying to rely on the technologies like IPFS.
But you don't mean that a single node would have to have stuff that is exclusive to that node, I assume, because that would be very vulnerable. If one node
Yes.
disappears, then you get part of your file.
Yes, it should not be possible in the properly organized ecosystem. But it is how it is done right now in, for example, in DOI.
Yes, it is. If their server goes down, your
Yeah.
DOI is useless.
Imagine Elsevier endpoint calls up and hangs down. Then how many DOIs we will lose? I think it's around 40% of the whole ecosystem. And it's let's say, comparable with an amount of rotten links shared now with the DOI.
Yep.
So the
They're
problem is
counting
already...
a bit on no one actually trying.
This is the problem is already here.
Yeah, even in for public universities in South America that can no longer afford to pay in DOI, there is no guarantee that that metadata will remain in the network.
Absolutely, because it's a social contract between you and the stakeholder. As the stakeholder, and only this stakeholder, will have a proper infrastructure to maintain your federated database.
One thing that I would like to have explained is how, if we have a totally decentralized system, we have to have some redundancy, I assume, and then you can't have everything be redundant, because that would be silly. Then you would have the whole internet on every node. So some things will need to be distributed out. How do you solve that?
You just make the metadata redundant. And that's a very lightweight.
But you can't have all metadata on every machine.
Why not?
Let's say...
Because it would be pretty large?
No, not so much.
No.
It wouldn't.
Not so much. Metadata is very light. I mean, the metadata could be in the whole network.
Okay, I have a pretty good information about this. I was trying to study all of the decentralized network infrastructure, and so I cannot write it down on our agenda, because most of the use cases I studied were having a lot of legal problems, because most of the governments are considering them connected with the piracy. But what I've said, if we are speaking about DOI, the total amount of a singular and granular metadata you have to share is around, for, let's say, all of the available articles still from 1998 to 2017, it's around 30 giga. All of the available metadata, including the cover images, so on. So it would be reduced.
But
very.
Then you would have 30 gigs on your phone.
No.
Would you want that?
No. To avoid this, sorry.
I think it's just saying goodbye to someone.
Yeah. Yes. Well, so to avoid this, there should be somehow the let's say the deployment deployment schemas, because it's not a question about access, it's a question about deployment. So, for example,
Yes,
if you have
I see.
Yeah.
So if you have the protocols installed on your phone, you might have just the data you have actually been looking at stored.
Yes, exactly. And there is a project that already implements this on Android. It's called Durian, but it's literally connected to the IPFS infrastructure. I will drop the link, but probably
Okay. Yeah, please
Yeah.
do. I have completely missed that.
IPFS seems to be a good system or no?
Yes, it seems to be. It seems to be the only, let's say, disadvantage we know about it. It's, let's say, literally the difficulties to deploy and to, let's say, to automate the redundancy.
So is the API very hard to program, or why is it?
No, the direct acyclic graphs.
Okay.
Yeah, so here is a link. And this is
So
how, yeah?
No, sorry, please go.
Yeah, so here is one of the possible IPFS gateway implementation on the top of Android.
Yeah, I see. Durin's Gate.
Yeah, and it works exactly how we were speaking about. So once you are requesting something, you will cache a bunch of metadata. It's let's say several kilobytes, and you will share it. Like it is done in the technologies like BitTorrent. And probably one of the best thing I saw as a use case is maybe sadly for all of us, it's a part of a Sci-Hub project. And let's say using, for example, like 1 to 2 giga of the space on your machine, you can easily maintain hold the core metadata of this project. And this is why it's so widespreading.
Yeah, just the framework here, the Durin Gate was less than 10 megabytes. So
Yes.
That is very lightweight.
Yes, it's a lightweight technology. And this is why I'm speaking about let's say actually the multiple redundant caching of metadata. Because in this case, the technology will work like BitTorrent. Because, for example, if you are downloading the Linux distribution using BitTorrent network, some thousands of people are sharing the same data, then you will have it in seconds.
Yes.
Yeah. In the, let's say, but in the pure IPFS implementation, there is no mechanism to maintain this without placing the efforts by your own hands. It is not implemented. It is not implemented. I don't know why, to be honest, but it's already implemented in one of the layers of an IRO network.
So that is why you have been a proponent of IRO.
Yes, and also IRO has another use case, which is called Standard Template Library. It's shared over IPFS, but it actually works over IRO. And this project, actually, it may share up to 500 terabytes of data with exactly this mechanism of sustainability.
So in a way, this would be like a huge BitTorrent web where actually everyone cares about the data.
About metadata.
About metadata and about the original data that you're linking to.
Yes, and now we are imagining our infrastructure as, let's say, every PID you are minting is like a creation of a Git repository on GitHub. This is a mechanism.
Yeah.
So you have an, let's say, public commits and versioning.
So what we are looking for is actually a way to just do right click and say, I want a new PID, and then drag everything you want in it to there, type your metadata, include your images and your other metadata locations maybe, and then
Exactly.
just mint.
Exactly. And if, for example, if you want the peer review from the trusted stakeholder, you may ask someone or some organization. So please, can you, for example, place for me a request for a peer review? Here is my public key, and then it would be done like it is done
Yeah.
now in, for example, in let's say in the platform like Nodes, because the Scilabs are trying to do this.
Yeah, I think one thing you could get as a benefit from this is also that you could spread your data and your research to
Exactly.
places that have never heard of you.
Exactly. And
So,
once you
so
are,
the one thing that could make be on the top list is that it would be easy to search and look for data, because
yes,
I think that is a key point that I would like anyway. So that others' data will also be sort of available to me, available in the sense that I could find it. Maybe not available in that I could just download it. It might be restrictions on it, but I should at least find the metadata.
yes, because again, the social contract is a term of deployment, not the system itself. For example,
I think I understand what you mean by that now.
yeah, because for example, the problem is search. Because to have a effective search, you should have a lookup table organized like a tree or something like that. So it's a very fast hash table that consumes a lot of memory, that consumes a lot of computational power.
Yeah.
Sorry, yeah, just a sec, because I have probably the error report from my AI note taker.
It's been a while. It left the meeting.
Did you use Otter?
Okay. Yes, I'm using Otter. Because Fireflies I have expired.
Yeah. There is an
the
AI
thing is
companion
also,
inside Zoom now, I think, that could actually do a summary.
Yes, so it's still recording. Oh yeah, never mind. So because we have a recording of our meeting, and I will place it on YouTube, so there is nothing to worry about. Okay.
So could I ask something?
yeah,
Sorry.
Please.
that's what's also important. Sorry.
No, go ahead, Sergio. Go ahead.
That also you can refer to data.
Yes.
That you also can refer to data easily with the PID, universal PID. So eventually, with the growing of artificial intelligence, at some point we should regulate artificial intelligence and force artificial intelligence to cite the sources of their training and to cite. And if you don't have persistent identifiers, then artificial intelligence will never cite where the source of the answer is coming from. But if you have a universal persistent identifier, then you could easily also say that put the reference where the information is coming from. So it's a human versus machine kind of also.
What I would like is that if you use this DOUE or whatever we are calling it now, and you type in like your reference and then hashtag refs, you could access everything that is referenced by that article and so on. So you could actually make some sort of list backwards until the original source. If you would,
Yeah, and you can make I don't know if you have ever seen a research rabbit on the tree and the network that it shows. Have you seen researchrabbit.ai?
No.
No?
Can you please place a link?
Okay, it's a research tool that you can it links data, metadata from on the articles, and then it shows a network from people who share research or papers that share how do you say these keywords. It's very interesting.
Oh, so it's
if you
sort of
to that kind of system, if you give persistent identifiers with the redundant metadata, it's easily to create a network of knowledge.
Yeah, I think the exploratory features of this is not to be understated, because they are pretty significant, I would say.
Yeah, and also
Because-
please go ahead.
Yeah, because that is the scientists I have sort of interviewed in terms of the dPIDs. They wanted to explore what others have done in similar fields, because that is the hardest thing to do.
Yeah,
Yeah, what
because
Sergio says is really interesting too, because that takes
Yes,
away
it's very-
the black box of AI, but that's relieving some of the black box effects.
yeah, Benke?
Yeah, just a question for me to again frame it a bit what we're doing, because I'm taking notes, I'm trying to follow. I'm not don't have the technical background, so I'm always trying to just follow whatever you're talking about. So I took down for me the question, what sort of the level is that we're working on or what we're approaching. And correct me if I have the sort of the level or the ideas, the concepts wrong, at least then I know what I can focus on more. So I wrote down, are we working on the method of use and trying to change research practices where we have to sort of educate researchers on how they use their data or how they register stuff? That would be one question. Is it the research practices? Or is it the discussion about standards? How and what kind of metadata do we want people to use, or what structures do we want to use? Or the third one, is it just the question of storage, of where do we store metadata? Or the fourth one would be, is it just sort of the software interface of using metadata for researchers? And it might be a combination of some things, but at least for me, it would be helpful to kind of frame it in a more precise way.
Jonas?
Yeah, I have an idea on how to answer that. And it's, I would say that we're more trying to enhance the scientific aspect of it with doing things more easily findable, and also able to connect several different data sets from places where you might not expect it, so that we get more science, we get better science, and we get more reviewed science, all for one. And of course, we want to sort of make the experience decentralized, so it shouldn't matter where on the earth you are living.
And of course, in my opinion, we should not strive to educate the scientists to do something in the other way. We should just to place more context to their current job, because they are not satisfied with the currently established systems. So, because of, for example,
we have to reduce this data curation drive.
Yes.
Which is absolutely crazy. AI should do it. And I think if we have universal PIDs, then AI will do that organization of the metadata. So people don't have to get so involved with all this metadata stuff.
Yeah.
that I think is a big drawback. That's my guess anyway, for scientists publishing their data and so forth. For scientists organizing their data, everybody asking them to organize their data according to one system or another. Nobody ever does this in life. And we should just let the AI do it. So everybody has an ORCID, so they can be found with an ORCID. If every data object can be similarly found, the AI can sort out all their keywords, whatever metadata they want to put in there, and do it that way. Jonas, sorry. Yeah.
Yes, I fully agree. We are actually looking into some interesting projects where data itself contains an AI inside the container. So it can sort of deduce whether or not it wants to be used in a specific way. So you can make data sensitive or not, depending on how you're using it first, I think. I'm
Yeah,
not
and if
sure
you
how
think
it
of
works, but it looked interesting.
yeah, and if you think of like health data in the European health data space or something, this is a kind of critical question.
Yes.
Because everybody wants to limit the use of their health data, for example. You know.
Yeah, and if data itself could know that, that would be excellent.
So can I ask? I want to ask something.
Yeah.
I'm gonna put this in the chat, and then, but I'm just gonna share my screen because I want to ask one thing about this.
Please.
So these are new services that EOS is forming, and this is what I wrote this silly paper about, or proposal that we do a beta project. But if you click on each one of these, you'll see coming soon and no more information. So this is file sharing. This is a Zenodo. This is I don't know what it is. It's all the same kind of stuff. But if you go back to upcoming services, all of these things seem kind of not so, but this might be interesting. And this is one of the things I put in. So I just put in this to do design and conduct experiments with flexibility while ensuring reproducibility. I don't care about the reproducibility too much, but what I'm interested in is if we can have a place to experiment with this, with the machine behind it.
Well, let's say as I have a lot of experience working with this constant integration templates, because it's literally dedicated to this. These virtual machines, let's say they are less the experimental points than the, let's say, the automated pipelines. So you are having this machine on which you are running some program, and then you are feeding your data to it. And the data is what you really care about. So in this case, I don't think we could rely on these virtual machines as the, let's say, the permanent deployment points. But for experiments, yes. To be honest, I don't see how they would try to propose it to the end users. Because
yeah, and also you have to see what level of end user they give you. I don't think they will give you root user, so you can change
exactly
the whole environment of the virtual machine.
Yeah, I don't think so. So we would not have an opportunity to store, for example, the private keys there. And there are, in this case, there are a lot of, let's say, sensitive questions about it.
But could we build the user interface in this environment?
Yes, yes, we can do. We can do. For example, well, if it is necessary to do. Because to be honest, I don't think so. If you would refer to projects like IPFS Desktop.
Yeah, you should have all the tools on your own computer, I guess.
Yes, yes, and you will just see.
Yep, that is one way of making it not centralized.
Yeah,
if you're using a web page, it's already a way centralized.
Yeah, once you have a constant user interface, here it is, the link. Once you have the your user interface on some fully qualified domain name, then you have a centralized point of failure. Here it's about the application called IPFS Desktop, because it's literally a web interface working on your own machine. It's made out of Electron framework, if I see well.
Because the way I see it, the other possibility would be to have it as a plugin in your browser. But
Exactly.
I'm not sure that is efficient enough.
Let's say some plugins are using the companion application, especially in the Linux ecosystem. That's quite a popular approach. So it could be a heterogeneous system. But at first, we should define an infrastructure, I think, and then up over the infrastructure, we would build some kind of user interface. At first, it should be, let's say, controllable from your bare fingers, and then the user interface is a technical question.
Yeah,
Yeah,
even also, like in
Yeah.
OpenAlex, tools can be developed by third parties based on the universal identifier network.
Yes.
You know, some solutions using AI or programmer, whatever research tools can be developed by third parties.
And also, yeah, and also the, for example, the open specifications on which IPFS is based, they are openly published by Multi-Formats Project on GitHub. I will place a link and you will see.
I think I would very much prefer it if you could install it on your computer, so I could just right-click and
Either me.
make a PID.
Yeah, either me. I think every one of us would like to have something like that. So you have a client, let's say client, it's not actually a client, but you have a software, you are installing it on your machine, and you have, let's say, the part of your desktop dedicated to the data you are sharing or you are searching for.
What do we do with the problem then of getting flooded with junk?
Let's
If
say with
everybody can
spam.
publish anything they want to, and everybody has to go through everything that I've published in my life, which would be a terrible nightmare for people.
Well,
Why can't, how do we sort through the junk?
Do we have to?
Sorry?
Do we have to?
Well, yeah, and then the question is, what is junk and what is not junk? So, but
The ORG seed is already a filter. The ORG ID, I mean, it's already a filter.
because it identifies the person.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, as you are emphasizing the person, but as we have the infrastructure that allows you to generate your own key, then that it requires somehow a mechanism, let's say, to at least to report something.
But don't we run into the danger then that we come back to a similar place we already are, which is we have trusted persons more than we have trusted objects. And what we want in science is we want trusted objects.
I agree. Because even a simple thing as if we just tie it to person and not have it can be tied to person, but if we have it must be tied to person, that's the filter way, then you immediately run into something like, okay, what if an organization wants to publish something as the organization?
How do we
handle how do we handle like publications that are in the future? I'm thinking in the future, how do we handle that something may be published by something that is not a given person, but still is, as you said, a trusted object?
True, but that trusted object in today's setting is a journal that is administering a DOI. So
Yeah, I mean,
and that is what we want to actually replace. But we have been thinking about replacing it with each and every scientist, but there might be another way.
Yeah, but I think with a journal can get an org ID or not, or only persons. Institutions cannot get an org ID.
I guess no.
no, but
The
there
organization?
are, what are they called?
ROR.
RORs? Yeah, RORs, yeah. So, but yeah, you could establish your PID so that any kind of person, be it a human being or an institution or something, could get their personal ID. That's okay. But the question is, what the problem is we really have science that's run in a certain sense by reputation. And of course, your reputation depends upon where you publish and so forth like that. But it all comes down to, well, he said or she said, and they're the trusted person, they're the expert in the field, you know. Joe Biden said, so it must be the case, or, you know, so you know, that's what it comes down to. You go up the chain, you know, or Anthony Fauci said, you know, take the vaccine, because if you take the vaccine, you won't be able to contaminate other persons. Changed his mind 2 weeks later, but it doesn't matter, you know. And this was, you know, I mean, we saw this with COVID. This is a huge problem because we're relying not on, we didn't have any digital objects on which to rely. We relied on what persons were telling us.
Well,
We relied on what like ministries and stuff were telling us.
Exactly, persons, whatever kind of persons they might be. Yeah, but we didn't have.
But what would be the equivalent if you remove the persons?
No, I don't think we can remove the persons, but how can we increase trust in objects?
I think
Because what we want to say is that what everyone says has value. Let's say it's that, right? But it's not the person that's saying it, it's what they say that has the value. And we have to locate the value in the object. Einstein's theory of relativity is not because Einstein said it, it's because the theory stands on its own.
Einstein
Okay.
was because he was the one with the theory, not the other way
Yeah,
around.
exactly.
yes, but
when we have vaccines, we have Anthony Fauci instead of any data on the vaccines. And that's what we don't want.
yeah, but you have to be able to read it. And that's the thing. Because Cuban did research on COVID vaccines, but nobody could read it.
Yeah, the Chinese did and the Russians did too, and nobody would look at them.
Yes, but it's not only
And the
because,
Indonesians did too, and they wouldn't look at them.
yes,
Nobody would
so-
look at them because Fauci didn't said we shouldn't look at those.
Well,
Yeah,
in Sweden we had a bit different approach.
yeah,
I want to share just a
Please.
South perspective, because for us DOI is not in every journal because we cannot pay them. You know, so we are already out the network.
But you can put it into Zenodo.
Yeah, but then it's a European publication. And we choose not to put it in Zenodo. I know Zenodo is a solution to generate DOI for my journal, but then I lose my
Identity.
regional science production. You know, I want to. I'm jealous of my research, and I want to keep it in my server and to be able to give it a PID that can be part of a universal network.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And that's the thing. So where do you get the network from?
Yeah, and that's what we have to create this solution. I
But
think
the PID by itself won't give you the network.
No, the PID will not give you a network,
but it will give you the discoverability. Internet is the network.
Or IPFS is a network, let's say. So the connectivity is not a network, but the let's say the technology is a network.
Yeah, the fair principles means findable and accessible, and that's the main thing of the F1 and A1 is persistent identifier.
Yeah.
What I would like to imitate, and going back a little bit with this, also not to rely only on personal publications, because that's what Desi Lab also went through to a solution, a very individual solution, and that's not how science is done. Science is done collectively, and we should not be a tool only for individuals. Permalink has a registry that you can register as a person, but also a person that represents, for example, a library. And then you apply, they check what the fields that you fill up, the form you fill up, and then if it checks, then they give you the credentials to publish in the name of a library.
But isn't that
So
exactly what the open science clouds are doing? All the open science platforms are basically creating libraries.
Yeah.
With a name, the African, the European, the global, from China, but the US, everybody's going to have their own national library. Just like we have them now in buildings, they're going to have them in clouds. You
Yeah.
need the platform.
But what I mean is for the persistent identifier, you could use the ORCID, but also you can apply to publish as a journal or as a repository from an institution.
But one of the problems here is that in 100 years, none of the persons will be around. In 100 years, maybe none of the institutions will be around. So how do you actually know if what you're looking at is good science or not, if you don't trust the object?
Exactly.
That's exactly what Francis was getting at. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. May I play? Sorry, Lars, please go ahead.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we were kind of skirting here that I want to bring into the discussion, because yes, the problem of trust on the object is real, but also the discoverability and integration of distributed networks is really important, because we were bringing it up like platforms like EOS, like different clouds, right? We need a way of providing discoverability that you have a network which contains PIDs, these dPIDs. So we need a way for another network to find a network that has dPIDs. Right?
Well, yeah, it's a good point, but I have here a remark. Imagine, please, the system in which we have the PIDs that everyone can mint, because it's not a context of the social contract. And so everyone can mint, can publish the key, can just place a link on a Facebook or somewhere else. Never mind. Then we have, for example, non-commercial organization or the network of organization. It could be recognized as, let's say, in any way we would imagine. The only thing this organization needs is to have somehow the way to, let's say, non-abundant way to mathematically confirm that they are they. And once some PID is published, this organization may receive a request from the publisher to, let's say, verify it.
I think we
And
have the the same problem that YouTube has and that X has. We have the exact same problem.
Yeah. So once we have so it should be actually a way to establish a social driven entity over the already minted PID. This is how I want to think about it. Because just to continue with this, I place it to the link to Aero blobs, and the blobs are immutable because they are IPFS objects. So imagining our organization, for example, a non-commercial fund or the university to which you are applying for some procedure, and this is social driven procedure, which we don't care as, let's say, the holders of the PIDs. But once you pass this procedure, the organization will have you, for example, the digital signature that would establish a statement that this is to be, let's say, a good science. And this organization will have only one obligation: to publish, for example, once per month, the immutable collection of the PIDs they verified.
Yeah, but you still have a verification system.
Yeah, but these verifications, I mean that this verification system is actually social driven. Do you
What
think
do you
that
mean by that? What
Sorry?
exactly
So
do
the
you mean?
Yeah, go ahead.
My question was, when you say social drive, what do you mean by that?
Because verification in terms of, for example, verification of scientific research is a social contract. In, let's say, in very abstract terms, it's a social contract. It's not a technical question.
No.
Yeah, but it will
But
involve
you-
some kind of decision-making, some kind of censorship, some kind of
Yeah,
that is
selection process.
that is where peer reviewing comes in. That is
yes.
what guarantees some sort of quality or some sort of persistence, some sort of, I don't know, quality in terms of scientific value. And the journal is what's taking the responsibility to do that. What you're saying is that someone, unspecified who, should do that.
No. I mean, this entity, to stay trusted within the society, should disclose itself. Because this is actually this is how it is done. For example, no one, many people can see, but not so many people will believe in the videos on YouTube dedicated to the flat Earth theory.
No.
Yeah, but it's a context of verification. We can see that someone would try to, let's say, to place the verification statement about it. But how would we establish between all of us? Now it will be the social contract around it is trusted or not.
This is the problem with the research evaluation that our project has.
It's a
The
problem of
project is
evaluation.
that we have to evaluate, does Benja get the job or does Sergio get the job? And we have to go and look at what they produced as scientists, and we have to evaluate not Benja as being a nice person or Sergio being a nice person, or I like Benja more than I like Sergio, or Lars really likes Sergio. But we want to look at some kind of way to look at the objects that they produced and to say, these guys are both geniuses. We have to open up another position and get them both into our university organization, whatever it is. But we have to do it on the basis of the value of the objects. And indeed, it's going to take human beings at the end of the day to make that decision, or we would want And all of us would probably want that human beings make that decision. But seeing the enormous amount of stuff that's published, how do we evaluate Benjay's productivity or Sergio's productivity against not just what Jonas and myself and Lars think, but against the entire body of science? That's at least that can have a place in the discussion. It doesn't have to be the deciding place.
Well, to me, it's we have only one way, as it is established even now. Once you are minting the PID, you may do it voluntarily. But once you want to have it recognized, there is a, let's say, social driven procedure. Once you pass it, you have, let's say, your PID signed and, for example, publish it within the collection by some, let's say, social trusted entity, and that's the only way. Which
and the only social trusted entity, the only social trusted entity that you can really have at the end of the day is government. Nobody trusts government. I'm all on board for that. But there's no other entity that has a kind of legitimacy of a government, whether that government is, call it what you want, call it far-right dictatorship or call it far-left communism or anything in between that you can imagine. That's still the only legitimate authority.
Yeah, Jonas?
Jonas.
Unless we can amount more money and more soldiers than every government, then we could be that entity.
Well, that was my
Yeah, well,
original objective. Yeah.
Yeah, we need more guns.
Yeah, well, when it comes to, let's say, to real assessment of evaluability, then we cannot literally avoid these processes. For example, to have a so if we want to do what we could do, to have a, let's say, an open peer review, all against all.
The objective is always to create as much freedom as can be allowed. And that's always a backdoor until somebody wakes up and sees, oh, they went too far. And then they're going to come and they're going to shorten it again. But that's the history of humanity. It will never change.
But
Never,
I mean,
ever change.
that could be one of the strengths as well, because if we don't want flat earthers and try to sort of take that away because it isn't real science, they will just use other ways of identify their files. So if we allow everything, we can at least have some sort of peer review list or some sort of governance in terms of actually measuring the scientific value afterwards. When things are published, it will make it easy to see what the enemy is planning, so to say.
Yes, it's also my context. So we can mint a PID, but all of the measurements are afterwards.
Yeah.
But yeah, please.
Sorry, I shared this link for perma.cc. I don't know if you know this tool.
At least I know.
That they're trying to make links very permanent.
Yeah,
I think
it's not decentralized, but they have the possibility to do, you can register as a person. And then if you register as a person, you have a limited amount of permanent links that you can create. Then if you want to register as a library, then you get, as I did for my library, then you become like a super user, and then you can give users to collaborate under that library. I think we can create that kind of registry where you can represent a journal, or you can represent a library, or you can represent a university or a repository, and mint or give also users permission to others. I mean, with my registry now as a library, I can create users for this platform. In that way, you will solve, because you have to create a tool that is looking forward, but also giving a solution for what is going on now. And also for this vacuum that is there for us in the Global South that we don't have access. I don't want to be repetitive, but the main thing is we need a solution to identify in a way our production that it's also part of the global community of science, and we don't have to like our journals have the standards, because the standards are put in a way that we cannot comply, because we don't have the persistent identifier, because we cannot pay them. It's a tricky question, no?
Yeah, and also I may add that it is. I don't think that it is now in our scope and in our context to make some kind of assessment or assessment tools, or let's say arrangement tools, because otherwise we will obtain something very likely looking like the Facebook newsfeed right now. Because if we would try to build something built in within the system, and the system is decentralized, then always someone would try to find a way to hack this system. Once you have an arrangement and assessment algorithm, then you will have it broken once.
Yeah, because we are thinking about metadata. We are not thinking about the quality of data.
Yeah,
I mean,
and
just the quality of metadata.
Yeah, for example,
It's a good point.
It can
It's
be a solution for.
It's a good point.
It can be a solution for better science, because you will have access to science that you cannot see now. You cannot discover. You can. It's not part of your network. What is done in Nigeria or in Cuba or in Iran, because they are doing science also, and
Yeah,
you
that
just
was my
cannot
point
see
3.
them.
Yeah.
So, maybe you're right, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe we don't have to solve the problem of the value of the objects. We can just do the FAIR principles basically. So that, and use the trust principles and the care principles, whatever we want to, but I always think, I know the GDPR was written so that all our data would go to the US, that it would go to the governments and so forth. And I even heard the commissioner almost say that in a meeting. That's the whole point of it. It's just to soothe the public and to think every time you open a website, when you consent, that you're actually doing something. But they still make an opening there where you can still use the GDPR in a good way to insist on some rights and so forth. And I think open science is even better, because they make this opening where they say, oh, we want open science. They really don't. They want to get your data. They want to own your data. And every government wants to own data because it's valuable. Anything that has utility has value. So they want that. But we should use those arguments as far as we can take them, but we can never jump out of our own skins. It's impossible. It's really impossible. So it's a matter of achieving something small by going for something very big.
And this is exactly what I am talking about. So yeah, Jonas, please.
Yeah, I had just a comment. I agree fully. And the thing that we were talking about before, that the value of the object itself, I mean, by continuing to have orchids and a person behind it, we are actually saying that we are valuing persons. And as a human, I actually do that. I value humans more than objects. So in a way, we're still keeping with some sort of ethical guidelines, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. The problem I have is that with regard to science per se, science in and of itself, what we value is knowledge. And we can't lose sight of that either. But of course,
No, but
it's
if
human
there are no
knowledge.
humans
It's
here
human
to,
knowledge, yeah.
if there are no humans here to have the knowledge, is it knowledge?
Yeah, I mean, we don't have to go into the theology of it, but yeah, okay, yeah.
Yeah, may I place a remark? So, let's say just telling in advance what I really want as also as a scientist, what I really want to do. I want to, let's say, mint for something I wrote to mint a PID, and then after some time, let it see it publish it in one of the collections, just a link, the redundant and automatically synchronized link, published, for example, by the Stanford University. And also signed and peer-reviewed.
That
Despite...
that is what you expect, I guess. But what you really want is for other scientists to find it, no matter how they do.
To make it findable in the collection, publish it by some organization which is already holding a list of these collections, and provide, for example, the advanced searching, and so on.
But that could be your university,
For example,
your company, or whatever. It doesn't have to be one of the large journals.
yes. But it should be, let's say, as this organization, we will never avoid this, as this organization is known as, for example, the producer of robots, then I will request the review and publishing in the collection in this organization, more likely than, for example, in the organization producing the cranes. So it's like that. So it's a reputation mechanism that I think we should not care now. It should be built over the existing infrastructure, because otherwise we will try to build in the social contracts within the ecosystem, and we will obtain something really like the DOI now.
So actually what we're looking for is not so much access to the data objects, that too, but I think what Sergio is asking for in the first place is access to the publication, or what the fundamental thing is in human life is access to a conversation. Everybody wants to be part of a conversation. If you're a scientist, you want to be part of that conversation. If you're a cook, you want to be part of that conversation, right? If you're a gamer, you want to be part of that conversation. And that's the most important thing in life. Nothing is more important than that. So, and just Brazil was, always at the forefront of access to medicines, right? We have to have equal access to medicines. And Sergio is also now putting this forward to access to the scientific community. It's really what you're asking.
Yeah. Menke, thank you. Yeah, and last two. We are speaking now for exactly 2 hours. So
Yeah.
the discussion is really, really very, very interesting and very, very inspiring. Let's say we have a bit more points in our, no, we have no points in the agenda, but not, we don't have another point of 3. I will try to think about it. And I think, do you agree to meet next time at 3rd of September at the same time? Okay, so I will plan the next meeting, and
in a new agenda document, we will start the new one, no?
yes, I will start it today or tomorrow.
But we have
Because I
to,
also-
we have
yeah.
to produce something. If we don't produce something, if we don't produce an object, we won't be able to evaluate if we're going anywhere.
Yes, and I think as a, let's say, a starting point for the further development, because it's time to start, I will try to study a bit the API of ORCID and the ways to generate the keys over it. I think it would be quite useful. And please, once I will start the new agenda document, please for me the links to all of the documentation you have around ORCID API.
We have to keep
Okay.
these chats too. These are invaluable.
It will be kept also on YouTube.
Okay.
I will
okay.
I will publish it openly on YouTube under the video after I will publish it. Also with subtitles and the links to Otter AI, the conversations.
Tomorrow I will be meeting with a person that expert in PID, so I will see how to join him
If
to the group.
Okay,
yeah,
excellent.
if you would write something down, it will be very appreciated. Thank you everyone for this evening meeting,
Thank you.
Yep.
and see you next time.
See you next
Bye-bye.
time.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.